Townsend plays on, plays to the whistle, kicks away for Valentine. Townsend! I love this game.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Chad Townsend Show, and today's episode is brought to you by the Players Golf Club. playersgolfclub.com.au. Head over to the website, check out the merchandise, accessories, polos. There's all sorts of really cool things there. You can check it out. So playersgolfclub.com.au. Don't forget, our Players Club Invitational is on Friday, the 13th of October. Your chance to come and play golf with the boys. Get your 4-ball Ambrose team sorted today. Some amazing prizes to be won, and it's going to be a really fun day on the green. So pencil that in your diary, head to the website, and you won't be disappointed. Today's episode, we are diving straight back into the footy. We're going to review last week's game, and then we're going to jump into the grand final preview. And as always, he's done a tremendous job with this final series and this podcast series. We're bringing him back, Elliot Lovejoy from Triple M, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Chad, always a pleasure. Something been doing the rounds that I need to address off the bat.
Oh, here we go.
I got sent a photo from the Paul Bowman medal night, the Cowboys night of nights last week, of your fit. I don't know if you have I don't know technology. So if you have the ability to put up all side by side while this is playing, but I don't know if you're auditioning for an extra on Sopranos reboot or what the plan was, a turtleneck almost going into summer in Townsville. It was a brave choice. With the mustache too.
I was just mixing things up a little bit.
You know, you mix. I couldn't tell. Honestly, I don't know whether I was aroused or creeped out or somewhere in between. It was.
Well, I'll tell you what, to be honest, when I got there and I was wearing it, I had a few looks at me and I was like, yeah. And then just comments galore. Love the turtleneck. Love it, Chatty. Handshakes. And I'm like, yeah.
Right.
The style.
Mate,
got style.
I'm not going to question style because I don't have any. I would come in here barefoot if you let me. I just had questions, and you've answered it. It's style.
I'll tell you what, it's better than wearing, like, Griffin Neem. Yeah. He's just wearing his club suit.
Was he?
Club-issued suit.
I respect that. I will not have you bag the beautiful strawberry on this podcast. He's one of my favourites.
Much love for Griff. I'm always into him. But, mate, I got to tell you what, I got a lot of compliments.
Yep.
And went with the turtleneck. Obviously a bit warmer here in Townsville, but the wonderful event centre in Townsville is air-conditioned, so I was pretty comfortable.
True. And the Mo is a permanent fixture?
The Mo is just a bit of a work in progress. Okay. Just mixing it up this off-season. I'm going to go and get a haircut this afternoon, but at this stage, I'm keeping the Mo.
Okay.
You like it?
I think it's the off-season. You can do what you want.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. All right, we're off to a ripper here today. We're going to get straight into it. Now we're going to review the weekend's games, the qualifying finals, and some fantastic games, fantastic performances. We'll get straight into the first game, which was the Panthers versus the Storm. The game at Accor Stadium last Friday night. Mate, we both tipped the Panthers last week. The Storm started fast, really, really fast. I thought they started well. When I was watching the game, I was like, geez, the Storm are on here. Like, we knew that it was going to be a fast start. But straight after that, they went back to kind of the old Storm way, I guess, from their season this year with a bit of ill-disciplined penalties, which gave Penrith some good field position. And they capitalised straight away, scoring the first try, mate. What did you make of the opening exchanges?
Must have been so frustrating for the Storm's right edge and even their middle to watch their left edge suffer the way they did all night. And you said it was an arm wrestle the first few minutes, and then with ease the Panthers scored that first try. When you're in a position in a game like that where, and everyone goes through it, where one edge will suffer one game, whatever it might be, how do you try and fix it mid-game? Is that one of the hardest things you can do?
It is very hard because you're at the end of the day, like, it's not one edge's fault over the other because there's a number of things that come into it, right? Yep. There's, do we have the number splits right? What speed of the play ball is there? Is the attacking team coming over the advantage line at us, or are we going to them? Or is it an individual miss, or is it a defensive decision that hasn't been made? In this case, I thought it was a defensive decision, and that play that they ran, you would have heard on the commentary that Remus Smith was probably a bit hesitant on his decision. He made the right decision, but it just gave Dylan Edwards enough time to catch and pass and hit Toto to score his first of his 3 tries. But it was that hesitation where if he jammed, Remus Smith jammed Dylan Edwards on the pass, he wouldn't be able to get that ball away. So to answer your question, it's a bit of both.
Okay.
We'll move into the next phase of the game, which was the Storm's ability to sort of, cop that first try, which, wasn't ideal to them, especially conceding so early when defence is still pretty, not as, I guess, fatigued. But the Storm got back. They got a penalty. It was Dylan Edwards' error. They got some field position. And Justin Olam scored a pretty good, individual try, didn't he?
Yeah, and I reckon you saw a little bit of a lack of match fitness with Isaac Tungo early in that game because I don't know that I've seen him one-on-one miss much at all this year. In saying that, if you're going to miss someone, it's going to be Justin Olam at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He had one of those games where I couldn't tell if he was going to score 6 tries or miss 17 tackles. It was an odd game for Justin, and he looked visibly frustrated at times too.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's been a bit of an up and down season for Justin Olam, and we expect so much of him because he's been so consistent over the last couple of years. But you definitely got faith that he can bounce back and have a better season next year. The Panthers were to complete the game at 87%, which was just absolutely phenomenal. The Storm at 65%, which they're numbers that just aren't going to win you any game, let alone a grand final qualifier. Mate, let's move on to the next kind of big thing that come out of the game was the decision for Big Nelson not to be sent to the bin. I thought it was the right decision, even though I am a halfback and I do like to protect other halves and getting hit late. It was more like a bit of a push than a shoulder charge or a tackle. Yeah. Did you think it was the right call?
Yeah, and again, not ever having been hit by a man that big, it's easy for me to say, yep, I'm absolutely sweet with it. But is that why you're okay with it? Because it was a shove, it was a full-blown tackle, then you think it's 10 in the bin?
Yeah, I think if it's a shoulder charge or he's obviously made contact to the head, but to me it was just a bit of a push, and I think that's fine, even though it was so late. And if that happened to me, I would be getting up, blowing up.
Would you blow up at Nelson, or would you blow up behind someone like Jason's back or something?
I would not be blowing up at Nelson. No. I'd be going straight to the referee and saying, putting my 10 fingers up and saying, mate, get him off. Yeah. But when you're in that situation, you think you're always right. Pleading with referees. So
I will say with Nelson, you could see how desperately he was trying to make an impact, and that was, I think he went to the bench straight after that play. So that was his last stint, and he was just trying to make a dent in those Panthers forwards, and as we saw, it's near on impossible.
I thought the exact same. I thought he tried really, really hard. You could really just see that he wanted it. Some of his carries and his defence and some of his efforts for a big man. I mean, we know how big he is. I just thought he wasn't taking a step back. He was ready for the physical battle. He was ready for the verbal battle as well. You could see he was going back and forth at a few of the Panthers players, which is what always happens on the field. But yeah, props to Nelson. He's had a pretty good year for someone who spent a lot of time on the edge and then going back to the middle. And I saw a quote from him last week in the lead up to the game saying that he was prepared to do anything that the coach wanted him to do. And I thought that was a really great comment from someone of his stature in the game. Mate, the next big event was, I want to break down a bit of that try. I think it was Taruva's try where Jerome Luai went down a short side. And I wanted to speak about why Jerome called the ball here. So if you pause it on the play the ball and you get a bit of a wider angle, which you might not be able to see on the TV screen, you'll see that Jerome they had 4 attackers down the short side. So it was Jerome, Sorrow, Crichton, and Taruva. And the Storm had 3 defenders. So I'm not sure who was the first defender off the ruck. It might have been Liero. And then Hughes was defending in the centres. And then I'm not sure who was at the right wing. So it's a 4-on-3. Jerome goes straight over the ad line, and then he sees Hughes in the centres, throws a cutout pass straight across Sorrow's face to Crichton, gives him the big man one-on-one with Jerome Hughes. And mate, you put a big man on a little man, it's a mismatch any day of the week. Will Warwick, that's who was winger, who's defending, he's a bit worried about Crichton, and that's what makes him come in to try and help Hughes. Crichton, as we've seen many times before, has that left-hand flick. He had a great game, and I think he's had a great season, Crichton. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think we've spoken about it before, and I know there's so many good ones out there, and I don't want to take away from him. For me, on form, he's still the best centre in the competition. Arguably, the other one is Herbie Farnworth at the moment, again on form, who'll be in the grand final, but I'm actually fascinated to see where he plays at the Dogs next year.
I was just going to ask you that, actually.
Well, Blake Taff won the player of the match yesterday in the New South Wales Cup Grand Final with South's one. He's going to the Dogs. I wouldn't think he's going to be sitting at Reggie's, and I don't know where else you play Taff. So I know he was bought as a fullback initially, Crichton, but I hope he plays on the centres because he's so good to watch.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and you know, that'll give, I guess, Serraldo a lot of chance over the preseason to see. But some of his performances this year in the centres have been, you know, phenomenal. So, you know, they've obviously bought Blake Taff and invested in him for a reason. He's a great player, very, very speedy, got a great pass. You know, in a different situation with some different coaching, he could really cement his spot in the NRL as a fullback, which, you know, isn't a bad thing if you've got quality players and Stephen Crichton playing in the centre. So that's one to keep an eye out for all the footy fans out there. As we said, Storm, just far too many errors on the weekend. They controlled 44% of possession, which, you know, as teams, you're trying to aim for that 50% mark, and that's something that the Penrith Panthers do so well is they control possession. They complete at a rate that's near faultless. We said that 87%, which was phenomenal. Brian To'o scores a hat-trick. Just quickly on Isaiah, and I saw a comment, heard a comment from Matty Johns, the great Matty Johns. Just quickly, what did you make of Matty Johns' commentary on the week? I thought it was a little bit different to hear his voice actually on during a game.
Having him and Cooper Cronk, and I listen to them on the Matty Johns podcast a fair bit, having them dissect the game as it was going, I reckon that was the best TV commentary game I've watched this year. I loved it. I really did.
For footy fans, I think it was fantastic. I was sitting there and I was listening. Every time Matty Johns would speak, I'd just find myself just really listening and watching the game. I was actually writing some notes in my phone, just to obviously speak about on the podcast. And it's really interesting to hear different perspectives from, you know, different players from different generations. And I thought, I wrote this down. You come up with a really, really good point about Isaiah, and we know what Isaiah brings to a team, but it's Isaiah's ability to pass and create for others that makes him such a threat. So Matty John's comment was because he's such a threat to pass the ball, quite often he gets one-on-one tackles. So because he is a threat, the defensive line tend to space out a bit more because they're defending the pass. But if Isaiah sees space in front of him, wide spaces, he'll show and he'll run himself. And so many times throughout the game on the weekend, because he plays such big minutes, the Storm were fatigued, defensive line. He shows and he goes through and he carries defenders. His post-line meters were phenomenal. Then he gets up and plays the ball. Again, he's nominated for Captain of the Year this year, and what seems to be just a bit of a staple in Isaiah's career, isn't it?
Is his footwork underrated? Because we talk about his ball playing and his carries. There's a couple on the weekend where I'd never paid close attention to his footwork before. He's a lot more nimble than I thought he might have been.
Definitely. Well, I'll tell you what, it's his ability to... And he does this... If you're watching the game, and I don't want to get too technical for people who may not understand, but if there's a play, like Penrith say they're going into the try line, and if there's a play ball on their left side of the field, so you kind of call it the 6-4 position where there's 6 defenders on the open and there's 4 defenders on the short side. Right. So if there's a play ball in that position, Isaiah Yeo gets the ball one off the ruck, he'll go straight and then he'll step off his left foot to beat the first defender, get into the second defender, and he's got this lead runner who's usually Leota or Fisher Harris just running an extremely hard down line, and then that's when he'll either run himself, he'll play short to one of his middle forwards, or he'll play out the back to Cleary. It's so underrated, that bit of footwork, and to me, him and Cam Murray are the best in the league at doing it. They keep it really simple, the Panthers, but they do it so well and so effectively. Mate, anything else to take out from that game on the weekend that sort of caught your eye, or a performance from anyone, I guess, leading into this week?
I was in awe of the Panthers forward pack. Again, what they're able to do, and you know that there's a bounty on their head every game, but they somehow find a way to escape with it intact. They're phenomenal, and that team is phenomenal. I think probably the last 10 minutes of it made a concerted effort to take a moment to think, you know what, there's a good chance in my lifetime I will never see a team again this dominant. 4 straight grand finals. What they've been able to do with the loss of some serious players like your Appy Coruscaws, like your Kickouts. Don't forget, they were absolutely written off start of this year. I think a lot of pundits had them still finishing the 8, but not necessarily challenging. And they've been incredible. Again, it just... I know it's a breeding ground for talent, that part of Western Sydney, but what they've managed to do with that squad, I watched a video of them running out to training the other day, and the fun they have, the family it's become, it must be so special to be part of.
Yeah, and it's one where people want to stay and be a part of. And obviously, there are some players who just, I guess because of the salary cap and the way that the NRL works and the success they've had, get offered these huge contracts to go elsewhere. And rightfully so, they deserve it because of their performances. Some of these players, and I think it's Matt Cameron who's the CEO, I'm pretty sure, apologies if I got that name wrong, but he was quoted last week to say that some players are now staying for less money to keep the gang, to keep the players together, which I think reminds me of back in kind of the Manly Seagulls day, back when there was Jamie Lyon and Watmo and Menzies and all those types of players, Stephen Matai, the Stewart brothers, those guys, I just remember hearing they all took less to stay to keep the core group together. So that's what success does. It's and they've just so impressive. And just to back you up on some of those numbers from the weekend, some of their forwards, Leota, 121 metres, Fisher-Harris, 150, Sorensen, 147. Mate, Sorensen's got to be up there in the conversation for one of the best back rows in the competition.
Yeah, and not that he's come from nowhere, but I don't think many expected because let's not forget, we talked about Viliami Kikau. He's taken that same spot on the left side of the field. And Viliami, totally different player, and I'm not besmirching him, but I don't know if they've lost a lot with Sorensen there, which says so much about the way he's played, because Viliami had a career year last year. Scott Sorensen, is he 30 now?
Just turned 30, yep.
Is in the form of his life.
Yep.
I don't know what the test squads look like later on this year. I would assume he'd be part of that New Zealand setup because I know he's very close to you, being your brother-in-law.
Yes, he is.
You must be beaming watching him play the way he is.
I am. I sit here and I'm just unbelievably proud of him. I messaged him before the game and after, and he's done a phenomenal job. Like, I'm so proud of him. His story's kind of been told a fair bit, and I'd love to get him on one day, actually, on the podcast and really just speak to him at length about his story, because it is one of perseverance. But I agree with you. I think the loss of Viliami Kikau was spoken about a lot in the preseason, but he's come in and really done a tremendous job. I mean, he's ran for 147 metres on the weekend, which for a back rower is big metres. Kind of anything over 100, 120 is pretty decent for a back rower. But he's done that consistently. The amount of carries, I know, like, you're watching that VB hard earn index and it just pops up straight away. Sorensen's up there. Liam Martin, 112. Isaiah 210 metres, phenomenal. Spencer Lenu had some damaging runs coming off the bench as well. But Sorrow, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. Super proud of you, and mate, one of the best back rowers in the competition, in my opinion. So Penrith, they go through to their 4th consecutive grand final. Unbelievably impressive, and we'll speak a little bit about more of them a little bit later on. But now we'll move into the second qualifying final of the weekend, which was the Warriors taking on the Broncos at Suncorp Stadium. Much was said about the time of kickoff. A little bit late for New Zealand fans, but it was an absolute sellout. The crowd was absolutely wild. The Warriors scored first. They break open the Broncos off what was the exact same play as last week, and a run on last play. That tight little short side play where the back rower runs a nice lead, Sean out the back, and then the centre runs a nice lead, and they give Charles a chance to make a pass or a run. Last week he scored. He ran off the play. This week the winger came in. He passes up and gives it to Dallin. Mate, what did you make of the game?
It was like, have you ever walked a really big disobedient dog? That's what it reminded me of, in that, yeah, stick with me.
That sounds horrible.
The Warriors are the dog owner, the Broncos are the dog. you're hanging on for dear life to this dog, hoping he doesn't run. You just want to keep him close. You don't want him to run away from you. Eventually, at some stage, though, it is inevitable. He will break off the lead and sprint, and that's what the Broncos did. Even after the Dallin intercept, where the Warriors went back up, I still thought, it's at some stage is going to get ugly for New Zealand. And that big Great Dane of the Broncos, they snap free. And, man, we talked about how fast they are last week. They're fast. I don't know what the next word from fast is, but that's the speed they're at the moment. They are incredible.
That is some of your best work, best
Thank you.
analysis work on the
Thank
podcast, on any podcast I've ever heard
Appreciate
in my life.
that.
So I hope the viewers appreciate that. Mate, I couldn't agree more with you. I thought it was a lot happening in the game. I obviously tipped the Warriors and predicted them to win. I was pretty keen to see the fairy tale continue. It was always going to be difficult. Obviously, the Broncos having the week off, freshening up, which is such a big help at this time of the year. But Billy Walters, mate, let's talk a bit about Billy Walters. I think he's had a tremendous season. Probably goes a little bit, I guess, underappreciated for not having, I guess, such a big name, I guess, as his other teammates. But his try early on from dummy half was great, and then he scored another one backing up later in the game, mate. What have you made of Billy Walters' season?
Yeah, we actually spoke to him a couple of weeks ago on Triple M. He's a really lovely fella. He's Billy, and he's a good story. He started at West Brisbane in Barden for his footy. As we know, he went to the Tigers. He was a half growing up. He was a half at the Tigers. Came to Brisbane as a half initially, and he said in the off-season he had a really frank chat with his old man, and his old man said, look, if you're wanting to stay at this club, if you want to play first grade at this club, you're going to have to make that number 9 position your own, and he's done it. We talk about most improved players in the competition. We've riffed on a few, Phoenix Crossland at Newcastle. I think we can settle on Billy Walters. Just what he's been able to do. And remember, everyone, the argument was, Brisbane are probably a great 9 away from winning the competition. Well, now he's turning himself into one. It's a wonderful story.
I think it's the consistency of Billy Walters. And, I know Drinky's really close with him and really good mates with him from their time at Melbourne together. But Billy's a little bit older from what I understand. I think he's 27 or 28. Been around the game, obviously, a long time with his dad. Obviously reads the game really well. You can tell that football's been a part of his life for a long time. But I think it's, like I said, his consistency from his best game to his worst game is the gap is just narrowed big time. His support play second to none, like all hookers should be, but it's his craftiness around the ruck and even his kicking game as well. Last week he's got a couple of repeat sets, and him being an ex-half would definitely help that part of his game. So props to Billy Walters, because we think he's had a tremendous year, and he's up for a big game this weekend. Mates, let's talk a little bit about Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. Scored another try on the weekend, and actually, was it 1 try or 2 tries?
Got 2, I think, at the end.
Yes, 2 tries, actually. 2 tries for Dallin, which takes him into the top try scorer in Warriors history for a season. Mate, what have you made of Dallin this year? And I know, let's just not forget that he missed the first, I think it was 6 weeks with a calf injury.
Yep. So,
mate, what have you made of Dallin this year?
Missed a couple, and as we talked about with Sean Johnson having a different halves partner next to me, he's had a couple of different centre pairings as well, and he's just carried on doing his thing. He's a great story, because I think Penrith to the Bulldogs to the Warriors, he had a really tough time at the Bulldogs. He was arguably their best player week in, week out, but he went through a phase where they weren't going well there. To see him playing the footy he is, mirrored with the best haircut in rugby league. It's a great footy story, and I tell you what is fascinating. Going into next year for New Zealand, obviously they have hope. 3 of the greatest names put together, Roger, Tuivasa-Sheck. If Andrew Webster's not playing silly buggers, if he's actually going to play in the centres, fascinated to see if it's on the left or right side, whether he partners with Dallin. Obviously, Rocco Berry's a really great talent. Adam Pompey as well has been playing good footy. It's a good problem to have, but that backline's only going to get better.
And that's a scary prospect, I guess, for opposition teams, because who do you take out?
What do you do? The only thing you could do, and you can speak more about Charles Nickel-Clockstad, could he play in the centres and Roger go to fullback, or do you not mess with something that's clearly worked?
Yeah, I don't think you mess with it at the moment. I think Chance deserves to keep his spot.
Yep.
And the season he's had, I mean, he's arguably had his best season as well. Plays a little bit different to other fullbacks. He's more of a running fullback, likes to break tackles and use his body. Defensively, he does great work. He's always scrambling, saving tries in the picture. He's all heart. Competes, which I love. I love that about him. He's not afraid to show emotion and wear his heart on the sleeve. So it's a tough headache for Andrew Webster to have.
And of course, his name eludes me. The bloke that retired at the end of last year is coming back. Chanel Harris-Tavita is coming back as well. So
they've got depth in the halves. I mean, SJ, Tamari Martin,
he was one of the best players in New South Wales
and
Cup.
Luke Metcalf, and Chanel.
Yeah.
And there's 5 guys on the roster.
They'll be okay.
They'll be just fine.
They'll be okay.
But just back on Dallin, and it's that right side that Dallin plays on the same as Sean, which is obviously Sean has played a big part in Dallin being able to score those tries. But it's their ability. We call it kind of the swing gate, where if you watch the Warriors this year and some of their tries, Dallin comes in field a lot, and him and Rocco Berry will use their speed to kind of swing around to the sideline, where some wingers like to hold the paint and go, straight, where the Warriors have really used their depth and their speed to swing around, to let Sean just, if the defence comes up, just sort of use his tempo and his timing. Quite often, we spoke about that first try with Chance, his ability to catch and pass. It's the same thing with their centres, their ability to catch and pass. It's such an underrated skill. But props to Dallin. I think he's had obviously one of his best seasons in the league as well. Mate, let's move on to the Warriors, one of the Warriors' tries, which I want to speak about. The same look that got your boys last week, Adam Fanua-Blake.
Yep.
Did you notice anything about that play?
I noticed they fooled me. I thought they were going straight back to him. He was going to crash over again. And then what is the subtle difference, I suppose, that led them to be able to get out to, I think it's Montoya that scored?
Yes, you're right. And I love it. And I'm not sure if it was Webster. I'm pretty sure it would have been Johnson in this case. But to me, the Warriors got the penalty and they're in really good field position, obviously right on the try line. I think, what play can we run? They would have practiced this all week. It's our go-to play. We scored off it last week, where we get to that middle of the field position. We get Adden a little bit wider, and last week they run the same play. They gave the ball to Adden out the back, who got with, I think it was Gamble one-on-one. Put the big man on the little man. Obviously, it's a mismatch. It's really hard to defend. Adden goes through and scores. So one thing the Broncos would have done all week is, in their video session, their coaches, let's have a look at this play. How are we going to defend it? What are we going to do? This play, you need to do this. Inside, you need to go and pressure Johnson. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. Outside players, are we going to hold? Are we going to trust our middle to check and release? Or do we want Stags to come in, jam, and shut it all down? So Sean, and this is why Sean has had a great season, because it's his consistent decisions that he's made. He goes to the line with the same play. He's got his back rower running the lead. He's got Adden out the back. He sees Tony Staggs coming from a wide field position aggressively. And instead of hitting Adden, he goes right out the back to Chance. And they just skin him for numbers. Chance tips it on, like we said, his skill of his catch and pass. Goes on to Adam Pompey, catch and pass, Montoya out the back. So that's just a little bit of insight and a little bit of info for you, mate. Enjoy that?
I did. I enjoyed the try. It was again, at that stage, you're thinking it was 24-12, but it was 4 tries to 3. Unfortunately, Adam didn't have a great night with the boot for New Zealand. But the game's hanging. I still think the game is hanging in the balance at halftime, despite being acutely aware that the Broncos had some serious firepower.
Yep, definitely. I thought the exact same. Mate, we'll move on into the back end of the game, and obviously the Broncos dominated for most of it. Their offloads were phenomenal. They had a lot of offloads, which broke up the game a lot. They moved the ball to edges. Reece Walsh was dangerous. Yep. I don't think, we spoke last week about the Warriors' ability to defend Reece Walsh and how they would do it.
Yep.
And it's, that aggressive style of defence, which quite more than likely happened closer to the try line. But it's around that middle part of the field, that transition part, where Reece Walsh uses his speed and he's the most dangerous. And that's where he really broke the game up. I mean, and to be honest, it's really hard. It's a lot harder to be aggressive in that area of the field. So I'm really intrigued as we move into the grand final, how the Panthers sort of defend it, because you saw the speed that Walsh was playing at on the weekend. It is scary for defense for the defenders, mate. The forward pass.
That is the worst miss I've ever seen in the NRL era. And I know there's been some clangers. There was one in a prelim last year we don't need to talk about. There was one in a Raiders game earlier this year. I just, as a fan of the game, and I know it evens out for your side too, by the way. I'm not saying, it's... And I'm not a fan of the Warriors or the Broncos, but as a fan of the game, we deserve forward pass technology. I don't know how that looks. I know Peter V'landys has come out and said it's something we'll look at, and I reckon there's a lot of players that would be frustrated by it. But fans of the game, sorry, my heart almost stopped about 6 times watching that in rage. I was one of those idiots that went back and watched the replay. I went and watched it in slow mo. It made me more angry. It was a Denver Broncos touchdown. I could not. If a touchy, and I don't want to whack the touchy, but if a touchy can't see that, it shows that we do need technology, because for whatever reason, Reece Walsh is as fast as Usain Bolt. You can't keep up. You can't get in line. For God's sakes, it went 5 metres forward.
Yeah, it was. I was sitting there going, no, on the couch going, no. Like, it was...
I don't even know what to text you. I think it was just one word. I didn't have many words left in me.
What did you did you text me? Was it an emoji or what was it? Was it, oh my God, or something like that?
Either that or a bad word. I'm not 100% sure, but it was...
Because the first thing I did was like, boom, check on Twitter, who's writing what, and there's people just obviously going off, rugby league lovers. But yeah, look, it was that far forward. To I guess speak a bit about the technology. I mean, let's use it. If it's there, and it's reliable. I mean, probably the biggest sport to use technology is probably cricket. Snicko and Hawkeye and all that sort of stuff. If it's there and it's good enough and it's been tested, let's use. If it's going to make the game better, and you said that touchy couldn't keep up, but surely the bunker can say to the ref in the year, mate, that's forward, because it's. Like you would ask Reece Walsh or any Broncos player or fan, was it forward? Yes. I mean, everyone in the whole world, it's not as like some decisions in black and white, which is like, we get some wrong and that's human error. But yeah, I am obviously I'm a big advocate for the referees and what they do. And
but this isn't bagging them.
Yeah.
This is purely okay. If plays like that we can't keep up and we can't get in line, it just proves that we need.
Let's make the game better.
100%. And again, for fans, I felt for Warriors fans watching that. And I know, look, Brisbane were going to win that game
They're
regardless.
up by 12.
Yep. And Brisbane were on a roll, and it was a line break regardless. But that moment it sucked the life out of them.
Yeah, and it sucked the life out of me because I lost interest in the game after that. I was like, it's over. Mm-hmm. The fairy tale of the Warriors season's over. But... mate, the Broncos deserve their spot in the grand final. That wasn't the game-defining play, the forward pass, because they probably would have gone on to win anyway the way that they were playing. Mate, we'll move into the biggest game of the year, and that is the grand final preview. And for context, if you are listening to this, we are recording this on a Monday, so very early in the week. If there is a few things that change or whatever, we do apologise for that. Well, we don't really. We're just...
I got no apologies.
We just thought we'd put it for context.
We just might be wrong on some things.
We just might be wrong on a few things, which is totally fine because we're just a few punters having a go.
Yeah.
Mate, I said it before, the two best teams of the season. This is just going to be an absolute mouth-watering clash, isn't it?
Yep, and we spoke about, I think it's the two best teams we've had in the grand final for as long as I can remember. And I know the Cowboys Broncos grand final sticks out. I know even the Cronulla Melbourne one when you played in that, two amazing teams on both occasions. I'd argue, I mean, this Penrith team they're comparing to Parramatta of the early 80s and whatever, right? And this Broncos team is as good a Broncos team as I've seen. So this will be the highest quality rugby league. Whether you're a casual fan, a super fan, I cannot wait to watch this game.
Both averaging 27 points scoring per game, which is really impressive. Just nudging on 30 points a game with your attack. We spoke about Reece Walsh before. The Broncos have a lethal backline. The Panthers have a lethal backline. This game, could be a big scoring game. It could be a tight game. We'll leave those predictions till later on. But, mate, I want to ask you this question because I've got a little bit of an idea. What do you think the Broncos have to do to, I guess, unsettle the Panthers this weekend?
I actually think they're the best team set up in the competition. I know it's easy to say that because they're 1 and 2, but in terms of the speed they play at, the way they naturally shift the ball out of trouble, they naturally shift the ball from their own halfway line, and that seemed to be. And you've played against the Panthers a couple of times. That seems to be, if anything troubles them, it's early shifts and almost being a little bit erratic, like the Brisbane team are.
Yep, couldn't agree more with you. I think the Broncos, and it's one of their strengths, they have to be expansive with the ball. They offload, and they offload at will, to be honest. I mean, they had 23 offloads on the weekend.
They had 16 at half time, I think.
Which is phenomenal. And that's what you need to do against the Panthers. You need to break their defensive line up because the Panthers, back themselves with a lot of line speed and a lot of heavy contact. But if we're getting a few more offloads and we're moving the ball to space and to the edges, like you saw the Broncos on the weekend, might have been Haas with that offload. They spread the ball. Mam got it. First thing he's doing is looking to the edge. Reece Walsh, who on the commentary was just standing there with his hands on his hips, sees an offload. His ears perk up. He's onto the ball. Ezra moves the ball to space. Walsh sees it. Boom. He's through a gap. Try. Walter scores under the post. So the Broncos need to offload the ball. 23 on the weekend. They need to back that up again just to break up that Penrith defensive line because they're just so good defensively. We spoke about Walsh's speed before, and the Warriors, didn't do a great job on shutting him down, especially in that middle part of the field. I'm really interested to see what the Panthers do and how they defend him on the edge. And, I've obviously spoken about that a lot over the past couple of weeks.
So what do they do?
Well, they've got to be more aggressive. Whether it's the same...
We saw that in State of Origin, with respect. They tried to be more aggressive. Didn't work.
Yep. To me, I'm rather... With a guy like Reece Walsh, I would rather us be more aggressive and go without hesitation and scramble than wait and sit on our toes and let him dictate to us. Because if he's dictating to us, we're on the back foot. But if we're a bit more aggressive and dictating to him, and if we get up in his face without hesitation at the right time and force a couple errors and then get into him verbally, who's dictating terms then?
Yep.
But if we sit on our heels and we let him run around in the inside who are fatigued because the game's just so quick and so fast, don't get there, and we sit and we wait and he runs through and turns us inside out, well, I know which way I'd rather get beaten.
I watched an Avengers movie on the weekend, and there's a guy in there called Thanos, and he says, "I am inevitable," and he basically takes over the world. That's what Reece Walsh is at the moment. Reece Walsh is inevitable. I don't think he can be stopped. I know the Panthers are the best in the business. I don't think they can stop him.
I'm loving these special comments at the moment, actually.
I had a really good sleep last night.
Yeah, that's great.
This is why you should always do this on a Monday.
Yeah.
I'm fresh on a Monday.
I was up early for the NFL this morning, 5 a.m.
Yep. We should be up at 3. That's in the first game. That's right.
Yeah, I know. 3's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Mate, what do the Panthers need to do? The Panthers obviously got an absolutely lethal team. Obviously, it's just more of the same, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the big one is the forward packs, and we spoke about the bounty on the Panthers forward pack. The Broncos forward pack, I know we always talk about Payne Haas and 220-something metres on the weekend. They shut down for Noah Blake for the most part, but probably worth handing out some chocolates to Tom Flegler, who's had a career year. Tom Flegler and Payne Haas versus Fisher Harris and Leota. And I know there's stars everywhere on that field, but that battle is the one I'm most excited for the first 15 minutes of the game.
Yep, it is a mouth-watering clash. The two forward packs, some of the best in-form players of the whole season, and probably when it's all said and done, some of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Yep.
Respectfully, the way that these guys are going.
Well, they compare Payne Haas to Lazarus, and if he wins some competitions, he'll be right up there with him.
Yeah, you can't disagree with that. He's absolutely phenomenal. Plays a little bit of a different style to the Panthers forward pack as well. That's obviously going to be huge. Cleary's obviously and Luai, their combination is going to be a huge factor. We spoke last week about the kicking games of both Reynolds and Johnson. This week it's obviously Reynolds and Cleary, who both got some of the best kicking in the competition. Nathan probably didn't get all of his kicks right last week he would have liked, and you know what he'll be doing this week. Such a professional, practicing it all, and you know, plays a big part for the Panthers. Mate, Brisbane Mania this week. There's a lot happening in Brisbane.
Thank God it's a long weekend, because Lions and Broncos fans roll into one. I'd suggest they'll need the Tuesday off as well, regardless if they win or lose. It's going to be a big weekend for Queenslanders in general. I never really know whether, you know, Cowboys and Dolphins and Titans fans, whether they would fall back on being Brisbane fans for this weekend.
Surely not.
Well, I wouldn't have thought so, but I know a few Cowboys fans that are jumping on the Broncos way, which surprised me because they are your sworn enemy. I know, but
Who are they? Because
I can't name them because they're fans of yours as well.
Well,
but
that's just something you just can't do.
well, I
I'm
wouldn't
sorry.
have thought, but I do think it's. Look, you and I don't understand Queenslanders. That's one thing we can agree on. And I do believe that they, for the most part, have their own back. So I think there's a lot of them that are supporting Brisbane this weekend. So I've seen a lot of people on social media wearing Brisbane jerseys and hats. So I'm like, didn't you go for the Titans 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
There's one of your colleagues, actually, who used to be a Broncos fan, turned into a Dolphins fan. Is she gone back to a Brisbane fan now? Is she chopping and changed?
I won't whack her. I think she gets a paycheck from the Dolphins, which is why she wears their attire occasionally, but she's a Broncos diehard. So,
well, I'm just unsure. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen two types of colours, so we might have to just raise that.
look, I wear my Bears shirts all over the place.
Can
I
you
can't
follow?
Really talk.
Can you follow two teams? Is that?
I
is that
don't
allowed?
like that. No.
No.
I think you can have a soft spot for another team.
You can't wear if you can't wear another team's colours.
You couldn't go to a game and wear their colours. No.
Yeah, it's just
What you do in your own home is up to you. But
Yeah. Just a tip on the AFL. I mean, did you watch the AFL on the weekend?
I actually did.
I did too, actually.
Yeah. I enjoyed the GWS Collingwood game.
Loved it.
I watched the first quarter of Carlton Brisbane, and then I watched the end.
Yep.
So that was two contrasting parts of the game.
I turned it on and I was like,
Yeah.
31-1. Oh my God, I was filthy because I wanted the
Yep.
Lions to win. And then I was like, I better just check the score. And then I just was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what a comeback!
Yeah, it was unreal. And I think it might have been 0-3 that they played against each other in a grand final where Brisbane won, I want to say. Back then, Guy Sebastian was top of the pops. I think the Lions, because I like the fairy tale story again. I don't know enough about AFL. But
Yeah, this is the tough one. I mean, obviously, GWS is from Sydney.
Yep.
I do like the Brisbane Lions because of Mitch Robinson, actually. And I watch a lot of his stuff on YouTube.
You know GWS are out.
Oh, sorry.
You're an idiot.
Collingwood.
Yeah, and not from Sydney.
Collingwood, because of their story, they've come back from like the dead, kind of.
Yeah, but it's like supporting the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
No one likes Collingwood except for Collingwood fans.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go for the Lions.
Okay.
All right. But I don't know that much about AFL either, to be
We
honest.
shouldn't be handing out this.
Yeah, not
So
to
if we're both going the Lions,
Yes.
definitely get behind Collingwood.
Yeah. It's obviously going to be a big week this week for both teams in the lead up to the game. Obviously a lot of media commitments.
Yep.
I remember playing in the grand final in 2016, and James Maloney said to our team, he goes, "Get ready, boys. Every single person's story gets told in the paper." No. And it really is like that. It's like one day there's like, a full life story of like the centers and then like the wingers and where they've come from and what they've been able to do. And it really is a special time. I know my wife kept all the newspaper clippings to show my kids when they get a little bit older. So obviously a lot to go into the week, and it's about how teams prepare and handle that sort of stuff. Obviously because there is a lot of commitments, but there's also training that needs to be done. So it's important to, I guess, separate and compartmentalise those two things. But the Panthers, I mean, they've got 4 years of preparation for this week. So they've definitely got an advantage in that department, don't they?
I mean, whatever they've done in grand final weeks the past 2 years before this one, I would suggest they're probably not changing a whole lot. Do you get access to train at a court or near there? Would they just be training at their own facilities or?
Yeah, I think it's your call.
Oh, okay.
So we done our whole training week at our base,
Yep.
but then our captain's run, we did it at a core stadium. And I remember, because I'll never ever forget, it was unbelievably windy and Fecky just could not catch a ball.
Right.
Just couldn't catch a ball. Like, we'd kick to him and he'd drop it, and we'd do practice after training, and he was just kept dropping the balls. And then I remember just like one of the senior boys, I think it might have been Michael Ennis, just going over to him, patting him on the back, saying, mate, having a laugh, mate, don't worry about it. It's all good. Just laughed it off. And Fecky obviously went out there and blitzed it the next day. But, just another little story. Sorry for going off track. But
No. It is grand final story week, so you may as well. What was Mick Ennis like that way? Because I don't know Mick. I love him as a commentator on Fox, but what was he like as one of your leaders that week?
he was good. He's very serious at training.
Yeah.
Set the tone and the focus at training, but then off the field, very relaxed, just wanted to enjoy the week. He was retiring as well, so you could just tell he was taking everything day by day, really enjoying what he was doing. I'll never forget again getting on the bus, and Mick always used to sit at the front seat, and I walked in and I sort of nodded my head and said, "Hey, Mickey," and he was a little bit intense, a little bit like you could just tell he's obviously thinking about it a lot because it's his last ever game in the NRL and it was a grand final. And then him and Luke Lewis used to sit at the front together, and Louis was kind of the jokester, the one who would sort of calm things down. So he would sit next to Mick, and I remember hearing Mick say once I saw Louis and he sort of cracked a few jokes, it really just made him settle down and not really be so serious. But good memories, mate. Great memories. And these two teams obviously have the luxury of heading into one of the biggest games of their careers. Mate, just quickly before we finish, I've got a couple more questions for you. Mate, these two coaches as well have done tremendous job. Ivan's obviously done it for a long time. Kevy, not as experienced, but this year's done a phenomenal job, mate. Can you split the two? Who have had a better season? What do you think?
I think you have to give it to Kevy from where the Broncos were. And I think it's between Kevy and Andrew Webster for Coach of the Year, and rightly so. And that's taking nothing away from Ivan because, again, people wrote off the Panthers with the players they'd lost. I'd go Kevy by a nose, but you look at how highly Ivan's regarded. If the rumours are true, looks like he's going to be an advisor to Brad Fittler for the Blues setup next year. So phenomenal year for both, and like the two best teams, probably outside of Webster, the two best coaches this year going head-to-head. Yeah,
it's really interesting because I guess people always, Ivan's had 5 losses this year, which is just phenomenal. And how do you not give a coach of the year to someone who's had 5 losses? But I guess that's when, expectation comes in for your teams. And obviously, respectfully, the expectation of the Warriors at the start of the year was a lot less than the Panthers. And the job that someone like Andrew Webster's done has been phenomenal. So does that come into it more, or is it purely just results? So, I don't know who obviously makes those decisions. All 3 of those guys, have cases to become Coach of the Year and have done a tremendous job. Mates, we had a pretty heated argument a couple of weeks ago about the time of the grand final.
Oh, yep.
We're obviously still splitting this, aren't we?
I haven't softened. I like night time because I want a Domino's pizza. I want to sit there and stew on my filth. I know I've got a public holiday the next day. It doesn't matter if the game finishes at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I don't want a Domino's pizza at 4 o'clock. I don't want a pizza at 3 o'clock. I don't want a pizza at 5 o'clock. I want a pizza at about 7:30. Get the teams ready out to me. Good to go. Nighttime grand finals. Gorgeous.
Nah, disagree. Can't agree with you. I'm going to go like afternoon, evening, so 4 o'clock kickoff or 6 o'clock kickoff. Much more suitable for the rugby league folklore, the families, the heart of the game.
It's a public holiday Monday. Everyone can stay up.
Nah.
Just
we want to have the boys around, the families around, the kids over in the pool, in the backyard. The kids will be asleep.
They can stay up. They're allowed to stay up. It's a public holiday the next day.
I'm sleeping.
Well, great. Then it's nice and quiet for the adults. Perfect. Kids can watch the replay on Monday. When they're mucking around on Monday and they're throwing feces, I don't know what kids do, but when they're mucking around on Monday, you put them in front of the TV, let them watch the replay. Perfect.
because then you like the later you are, like the adults are up a bit later, and then like you're trying to go to sleep and like
Party
by the time you go to
time.
sleep, it's party time. But then you wake all of a sudden like you're waking up at 6 a.m. from a kid.
And you say, shush, Dad's hungover. I need a couple more hours.
All right, well, we're not going to get anywhere on this, but we did ask you guys a couple of weeks ago, what do you think? And obviously, most publications have this argument at this time of the year. So if you've got an opinion on it, what time should the grand final be? Drop it down below or drop it anywhere. Give us your thoughts. Mate, lastly, to finish up today's podcast, prediction time. Okay. All right. Who wins the 2023 NRL Grand Final and why?
Can we get people in the comments to do it again this week? Because I felt less alone when we had people commenting last week their predictions too.
Yeah, I obviously got my prediction way wrong last week, and I opened myself up to a bit of criticism, which is totally fine. Doesn't worry me.
There was a funny one on there. So someone called you uncharismatic, which I thought there is some great insults. Uncharismatic is right up there. You can put that in your Twitter bio.
That's hilarious.
I'm going to go the Broncos train to keep rolling. I said Reece Walsh is inevitable. He'll be the player of the grand final for mine.
Clive Churchill.
Yep. Much like Dylan Edwards was last year, to be a different fullback this year. I'm going to go the Broncos 22-8. I think they win their first grand final since 06. Bonus points if you can tell us the halfback in the 06 grand final.
Walters.
Shane Perry.
Shane Perry.
Had that wonderful season. And yeah.
I remember him.
He was a really good story, actually. But I'm going Broncos to win.
Okay. My prediction, my tip for this weekend's game, and they've been the benchmark of the competition for the last couple of years, and I just think they're primed. They know what they're doing. They're week off. The team that they've got, the players, the big game players, the forward pack, the experience. It's hard to go past for me the Penrith Panthers. I think they win their third competition in a row, which will put them is up there with some of the greatest teams ever to play this great game of rugby league. I'm going to go score. I'll go 24-18.
Okay.
So both teams getting a couple tries and a couple of points, obviously, because they're very lethal with their attack. But yeah, I just think the Panthers will be far too good. It'll be a tight game. Like, don't get me wrong, and I could be wrong, but if there's any team that can win it, it's the Broncos, and that's why that's what makes this game so exciting. So there you have it, guys. There's your grand final prediction and your grand final preview for this week. Just quickly before we wrap it up, like we always do, and the NFL is in. Some games are in progress now, but we'll quickly go through some of the results so far, Elliot. Yep. And 49ers beat the Giants 30-12, which we both saw coming. The Colts this morning beat the Ravens in overtime.
With a backup quarterback.
Absolutely filthy. I thought the Ravens just absolutely botched that. The Browns, my Browns, we are back. What are your thoughts?
There was a really funny moment early in that game, and Deshaun Watson, I've been pretty quick to savage your quarterback. He, I don't know if he knew which direction he was facing as he was about to get sacked, and he's thrown the ball backwards along the ground, but it means it's still in play. So I think they lost about 10 yards. This one, the game was maybe 3-3 or something like that. I thought, oh, God, this is going to be a long day. They were outstanding. You lost your running back last week. You didn't really have a run game this week, but I think Watson was like 27 for 33 or something ridiculous. He was great.
Amari Cooper was solid. Yeah. Their connection was really good today. And good news coming out of the Browns too is that Nick Chubb was only MCL that he did, not the ACL. And obviously we spoke about that injury last week. But I think it's just his ability to squat like 300 pounds and that's put his knees in such good condition.
Crazy.
The strength. So while he's out for the season, it's not, career-ending or career-threatening, which is great news for the big Chubb. A couple more results before we wrap it up. The Lions beat the Falcons 20-6. The Packers over the Saints 18-17. What a comeback that was.
Down 17-0. That's great. As a Tampa fan, the Falcons and the Saints were 2-0 going into today, and they both lost, so that's handy.
Our producer Dale's Texans 37-17.
How does anyone actually look at the teams like, oh, Houston?
I don't know how I actually follow the Texans. Maybe something we can. We should get Dale a microphone one time and let him have a few comments. Hey, the Dolphins beat the Broncos 70-20.
Now you know me. I'm not a vindictive person, but Sean Payton is a bum. He's the coach of Denver. He came out last year and said Nathaniel Hackett, who's the offensive play caller at the Jets, he was the head coach at Denver. He basically slammed him, said, this has been the worst head coaching gig ever. What a horrible job he did, yada, yada, yada. Well, I think that was just the third or fourth team in NFL history that had 70 put on them. So, sucked in, Sean. I don't know many Denver Broncos fans, but like I said about the Chicago Bears, if you are one, it's time to jump ship. Pick a new team because they're dead.
Ciara, there's one.
Oh, sure. Sure.
So the Broncos fall to 0-3, which is just heaping pressure on Peyton and Russell Wilson at the moment. But what a performance from the Dolphins. They can definitely win the Super Bowl, I think. The way that
70 points.
70 points.
And they were up. They had 70 points with still about 10 minutes to go. They took the foot off the gas.
Yep. Unbelievable. And they're a couple of running backs, actually, both scored 4 touchdowns, which is phenomenal.
The dream, yeah.
Chargers over the Vikings, 28-24. The Vikings surprisingly fall to 0-3. Are they still, something this year, or are they done?
They're done. They were 13-4 last year, but couldn't do anything in the playoffs. I think they lost to the Giants. They're going to have an awful year. I think this will be the changeover year. So Kirk Cousins, I don't think he'll be there after this year.
The Patriots beat the Jets 15-10, and it just feels like the Jets' season just has been really just sucked out of life since Aaron Rodgers went down, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's a great video of a Jets fan. I think it was on the Pat McAfee Twitter channel. A Jets fan trying to yell at Zach Wilson because he had another incomplete pass and his false teeth fell out as he was yelling. So he's jamming him back in his mouth. It was awesome.
I love that. The Bills, well, they needed it. They needed a good performance. I think Josh Allen, been questioned a little bit in the opening few games, but I thought he was really solid today, 37-3. The Seahawks beat the Panthers 37-27. Cardinals beat the Cowboys 28-16. Mate, the Cowboys were paying like $1.13 or something.
Yeah, it was awesome.
No one saw that coming.
And Josh Dobbs, who's not only a backup at the Cardinals, he's only been there since the very start of the season. He got traded last minute from your Browns.
Yep.
They had absolutely no right to win that game, but they did. And I was watching that, and some of Dallas's play calling is the only thing that had stopped them this year. Their offensive play calling was putrid.
Yep. The last game result, as we're recording at the moment, the Chiefs beat the Bears 41-10 with Taylor Swift in attendance. Yep. Now, I'm not sure if it's officially official, but her and Travis Kelce seem to be a thing. I mean, are football fans going to like this? Chiefs fans going to like this? Obviously, it's going to bring a lot of attention.
I don't know if they'll like how many times they pan to her with Mama Kelce today in the box because we all know football NFL fans are, I'll say, stuck in their ways.
Yep.
And I don't know if Taylor Swift is part of the broadcast they want, but I think it's cool. I love both Kelce brothers. I watched that doco on Prime on the weekend. It's phenomenal, and I love Travis Kelce so much.
Yeah, I love both Kelce brothers as well. And I like Taylor Swift. I think her music's great. And I think she, does it.
It was a good shot of her when Travis scored. She let out a very obvious let's effing go, which is awesome. Yeah,
I did see that. At time of recording, guys, the Steelers and the Raiders are both 7-all in the game. Your Bucks play the Eagles tomorrow.
Yep.
You think they can win?
Yeah, I do actually. I need Jalen Hurts to go easy because I got a pretty tight fantasy matchup going on at the moment. The other guy has Jalen. It's a good test. You want to test yourself against good teams, and if we can beat the Eagles, then Tampa officially don't suck.
Yep, both teams are 2-0, so that'll be an interesting game. The last game, Rams versus Bengals. The Bengals are in a bit of trouble at the moment. They're 0-2. So plenty of NFL things happening, and obviously the grand final this week, guys. It's the biggest game of the season. The Panthers versus the Broncos. It's going to be an absolute belter. Elliot, thanks for joining us again, mate.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate your expert comment. This has probably been your best performance today.
No, I think. I don't know what it says about the other weeks, and they're not expert comments, but I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure you subscribe, you like, drop us a comment on anywhere you're watching this channel and or watching the podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.